Have you guys ever had issues with the camera not working in Zoom? What in the world?
I've had issues with it not recognize which camera I want it to use.
Can do whatever I want with my camera. Get real close to
Mm.
everybody.
I haven't tried the I think it's Logic Capture, Logic something like that. I haven't tried that once I've already started.
So,
I just do it like right from like I'll do the entire podcast like this will be great.
like
Beautiful.
it says the camera's on and it lights up, but you can't see me, can you?
No,
No.
got nothing over here.
Can I ask you the IT thing? Like, did you try turning it on and off again?
It's an integrated camera, so
Oh, it's an integrated camera. Did you try turning the computer on and off again?
I did do that. Yes.
I really think that one of our shows we should all just broadcast like this.
What, from the green screen only?
Yeah.
Yours is all nice and flat. Mine's all wavy. Oh, you got the chair, didn't you? You have a
No,
giant circle behind you.
I should have, because what I have is an ironing board holding this up, because I went cheap and I decided I did not want to pay for the one that came with the rigging and everything like that.
Yeah.
Now I'm regretting it, because yes, the chair would have been awesome. The chair condom that sits behind you and makes a big circle.
Uh, do you watch the Whiskey Vault?
I don't. I've heard really good things about it though.
I watched it last night because I got stuck staying up doing something else, and they went through the top 3 available bourbons, scotches, both Speyside and then the smoky scotches, and what else was it? And rye whiskeys. No, not rye whiskeys. They kicked out rye whiskey. I don't know. I think there was one other thing, but I ended up going out and grabbing Irish whiskey. They did Irish whiskey, normal bourbon, Speyside Scotch, and smoky Scotch. And I went out and bought Wild Turkey 101 because that was their number 1 available bourbon. And I was like,
Really?
nah, man, Wild Turkey's screwy. And then I tried it. I'm like, no, it's beautiful.
The 101 is not bad. Like if you just get the whatever the regular stuff, but which is funny, because yeah, you're normally like I just put a link in the chat. There's a guy named Mark Ripito. He wrote a book called Starting Strength. He's big in the powerlifting and weightlifting community, but they did a whole episode just on whiskey and breaking down the differences between Irish whiskey and Scotch and everything. It was really for 2 meatheads talking intelligently. It was kind of a fun conversation.
Welcome back to the Construction Dorkcast. In episode 14, we bring back Nathan Wood and add in Tom Stemm of the Construction Progress Coalition. This episode centers around one of our favorite topics, data. Why is it so hard to share data among our systems? Why is it so hard for data to transfer between stakeholders on the same projects in different companies? These are the types of questions that the CPC has been working on. We hope you enjoy the conversation as we talk about what might be possible if we find the right answers. Stay tuned for the announcement of our next episode. It will be an end-of-the-year wrap-up, and we want your opinions and input on what next year might look like for the podcast.
And we are live. I hope to thank everyone for stopping by on day 2 of Autodesk University. So what a better day to be doing a podcast. I know I was on there today. I know Jonathan was. Nathan, I think you were on there today. So that just feels like that energy we all started this thing for is just, it's here in the air today. I can kind of grasp it. So I'm excited to get on and talk. And what a better topic to have this group on than episode 14, Take Me to Your Data. That's right. We are going to talk about data. We're going to talk about interoperability. But first, we're going to lubricate a little bit and talk about what we're having to drink, where we're coming from. And Travis, I'm starting with you because I love that you changed that background behind you.
Yeah.
That was awesome. You
Well,
go first.
I was looking. I always try to find a meme or a movie, a funny movie quote, and I was doing different things about data, and of course, Data from Star Trek appeared, and then this came up. I'm like, this is perfect. This is perfect. So, yeah, Data Center for Ants. I'm coming again from northwestern Illinois. I have a bourbon from, actually, this is from Washington D.C. Republic Restoratives Burrow Bourbon. Pretty good bourbon. I'm really liking it. I make it into, I think I had a highball last time. I'm enjoying a highball again. So cheers.
Cheers to you. Trent, we're going to mix it up since we're going to go for it looks like we all found the same actor today. Go for it.
It's Ben Stiller Day, right?
Yeah.
I've got tonight I'm just doing some Tito's and some Sprecker's root beer. So,
Ooh, a Tito's and root beer?
oh yeah,
Really?
I've not
Give-
done that.
give it a whirl.
That's Sprecter's.
Nathan
Well,
does not. He's over there like, no.
No, I'm out.
Tito's is good. I'm all about the Austin vodka, but yeah, root beer is not my thing.
Well, all right. Jonathan, my microphone bro for the day. What you got?
I was watching the Whiskey Vault, and the Whiskey Tribe picked out what was their number one available affordable bourbon, and it was something that I would have never really thought to get for myself. So I did, and it's beautiful, and it's actually Wild Turkey, which has a really bad reputation, but it's the 101 and watered down a little bit because I don't want to drink 101.
I was
Like,
gonna say, yeah, it must have been a
it's
rough day.
no, but I'm telling you right now, not hot, really good bourbon, nice and sweet. Would be great in a mixed drink. And again, the army over there at Whiskey Vault decided that this is the best affordable available bourbon out of a bunch. It beat Maker's Mark, it beat Buffalo Trace. So I was pretty interested in trying it out, and I agree with them. You know, it'll be up in my shelf from here on out.
I missed my chance.
Flaviar.
Well, don't you worry, because your host today, Jeff Sample, is drinking a Woodford Reserve purchased Flaviar. That's Flaviar, Fliar. That's right.
Wait.
No, this is actually it's a Woodford Reserve, but it is the 146 Kentucky Derby specific bottle version. A little smoother, a little different, but I really, really like it. You know me, I just drink it neat. So, and maybe an ice cube there, but that's about it. So yeah, if you hadn't heard, Flaviar. Did we get enough plugs yet?
I think we're good.
Okay. No. And our esteemed guests, I am really excited. We have a lot of fun opening this up, but Nathan and Tom that are joining us today are really important figures in the industry around interoperability. They've not only made it pretty much their stake in either their companies or their organizations, so they really care and are passionate about it. So Tom, I'm going to kick it to you first. Kind of tell us where you're coming from, maybe give everybody who you are, and if you're drinking something, tell us what you're drinking.
Sure, man. I'm gonna mix it up on you guys a little bit because I'm a beer guy. So I'm just drinking a Kolsch style beer from a local brewery here in St. Louis, Missouri called Schlafly. So if anybody ever passes through the gateway city, it's a worthwhile beer to look up, especially if you're a Kolsch fan, which is a little bit more off the beaten path lager. Not a lot of people know about that style, but it's one of my favorites. So so yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Look forward to the conversation. My background, I'll let Nathan tell a little bit of the story on Construction Progress and how him and I came together. My background, my sort of dorkism at heart is I grew up in the seat writing code. So sat in the seat, wrote code for the first half of my career, and then I parlayed that into the entrepreneurial half of my career. So I built a consulting company, and doing that, worked with a large number of construction companies. As I got to know those construction companies, how they operate, how they make money, how they struggle to use data and use applications and tech, it led really to what the vision I had for Rivet was. And so 4 years ago, founded Rivet, whose purpose is really to help construction companies use technology, adopt and use technology at a faster rate. And in getting involved in Rivet, getting involved in the construction tech ecosystem, I ran across COSA back as I was getting started, and really was instrumental in getting involved with that, took on the executive director role. And then as I was trying to put together a vision for how COSA could be successful, got introduced to Nathan, and we started brainstorming some ideas on how we could pull industry and tech together, really create a force in the industry to help enact some of the change that we sought. And guess the rest, as they say, is history, but still a lot of work to be done in that regard. So I guess that's my segue to help you introduce Nathan to.
Yeah, well, it's a great intro, and I have to say I have driven through the Arch City, and I have enjoyed. You have a lot of great little breweries, and when
Yes.
you go there, you got to drink some of that local beer.
We do.
And
Food and beer, those are two things we're underrated. We do really well at food and beer here in San
yeah,
For sure.
and I wouldn't have thought that, but but it was really good.
Yeah.
A lot of micros too, like
Yep.
good stuff.
Yep.
I love the Kolsch. The Kolsch is one of my favorite varieties of beer.
Yeah, it's
My brother-in-law got me on Kolsch. Yeah, I like Kolsch too.
Well, Nathan Wood, just go ahead and take it away. Although this is episode 2 for Nathan.
I know. I'm trying to remember what I said last time. Well, so in following suit with all of our whiskey Scotch drinkers, I do have a Scotch from Scotland, Balvenie Doublewood, one that got from a college roommate for graduation. Has been really one of the few that I do enjoy. So cheers to this. But I have to first ask Trent if he knows that FLA of COSA. Do you know what COSA stands for, Trent?
COSA.
Have you heard of COSA before?
Mm-mm.
Aha! 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 Construction Open Standards Alliance. So my background, again, I come from the general contractor's perspective, and joined up with Sasha Reed, Kyle Hughes, Todd Wynn, and Joe Williams. I mean, the whole crew of like the original dorks that were part of the Construction PDF Coalition, 2013, 2014, put out those guidelines, 4 pages that pretty simply helped us just basic adoption of CAD and BIM standards and getting as much data as you can fit, which is minimal, in a PDF. But starting that basic step towards at least digital file-based exchanges. And then as I started to learn more about APIs and all this language, and I've just been a sponge and learning from Tom and learning from COSA and forming together with them in 2017 to sort of rebrand the Construction Progress Coalition, and really recognizing that what's missing in all this is not even the technology standards or the technology capabilities. It's kind of this holistic recognition of the people and process change that needs to happen to make this work. And so it's fun to have everybody here part of this movement, and all of us dorks supporting it together and bring more than just the dorks, recognize that we're one perspective among many. And as we, tread into the world of architects and engineers and owners and everyone else, it's fun for me to realize that really everybody's saying the same thing, that you're hearing interoperability in all of these conversations. They just nobody recognizes that everybody's saying the same thing. So it's kind of fun for us to be in that position to just start connecting those dots and just seeing where they go.
Well, that's a great way to kick it all off, right? I mean, all the different perspectives, it's all about, what makes sense moving data. So I kind of wanted to jump back to Tom here on this one and really ask about, why should a company think about, bolting things together and having, why shouldn't they just go get one system and just make it work for everything, versus maybe picking things they want to bolt together. Yeah, but I don't want to give you my take on it.
I think they can. Why can't they? Yeah, they should.
Yeah, I mean,
that's one approach. I mean, hey, I'm an Apple guy. I have Apple. I try as much everything. Although I'm still Gmail. I still have Google
Yeah,
Docs.
I was just gonna say, do you have Google?
You can't be 100% exclusive. But I would challenge almost the premise of the question in of itself. But it is a good question.
I mean, from my perspective, I just think it's when it's the trend of technology. If you rewind the clock, a couple of decades, Oracle set the standard. This idea that you could have one soup to nut system and develop the concept of an ERP, but that has modernized significantly over the past 20 years. I mean, really, as we got those devices, as Nathan just said, he's an Apple guy, right? So he's got the iPhone, but that device sprawl has allowed us to be a consumer right here on our phone, right here in front of us, and because of that, we are in a distributed world, right? We're distributed in the way that we interact socially. We're distributed. I mean, currently, from a COVID perspective, we're distributed in everything that we do. But the world has become more decentralized and more distributed in the way that we operate. both in terms of having teammates that are living in different locations. Not everyone comes into the same physical office anymore. So how do you allow them to access data in remote locations? We're distributed in the way that we operate. I have a tablet, I have a phone, I have a laptop, and I have a desktop. Like, I've got now all of these different machines that I use to perform my job, right? And so, you know, the more specialized you get in terms of the role that you perform, the bigger you get, the more specialized you have to become. And at the end of the day, the more that you see that type of device spread, the more that we spread out, the less boundaries put around us, and geographic boundaries have basically evaporated in today's world. You can be across the world right now on this call with us having this conversation. So just the advance of the internet, if you will, the advance of distributed tech, it's taken basically technology, in my opinion, the trend of technology, this has been occurring for 2 decades. And so when you look at how that's going, we're basically going into the end user era, right? So in the 90s, the CIO made all the decisions on the tech that for the company that in terms of what tech is the company going to use. We're going to use this tech. Here's how we're going to use it. You know, all this centralized planning and distribution of here's how you do your job. But just as the generations have shifted in terms of, you know, from Gen X to millennial, et cetera, the way that we want to operate, the way that we want to work, and the way that we want to collaborate has shifted. And so, you know, the decisions for how I get my job done effectively are no longer being dictated for me. It's like, hey, if you need a tool to do your job better and it ultimately proves that you can make it work, do it. But when you have that environment, when the end user is deciding how can I most effectively do my job, now you have a different problem from the CIO's perspective. Now the problem is I've got data everywhere. I've got a lack of control in my data environment. I've got a lack of control from a security perspective. So how do I harness that in a way that I used to be able to just say, I'm going to buy Oracle or whatever, and soup to nuts, it all works, it's all in one spot. I might have a couple of departments in my company not operating very well because, you know, it's a really good accounting system. It's not a really good project management system for people out in the field, right? Or whatever the case may be. So from my perspective, it's just, you know, that's the trend. It's going to continue to go that direction heavily. When you look at systems like, you know, earlier one of you guys mentioned Slack, right? Like, a CIO doesn't sit down and say, we're going to use Slack. The members of his team basically start using it. Next thing you know, everyone's using it. Next thing they know, they're like, well, how do I get an enterprise license so I can make this cost effective, right? And then what type of controls do I get if I get an enterprise license? Because now I can put some controls in place in terms of, you know, retention and security and single sign-on and all these other types of things, right? And so the way that tools get selected has changed. It's not changing, it has changed, is my opinion. And so the more that happens, the more you move into this umbrella concept of how tech is ultimately used and adopted and therefore needs to be integrated. So sort of modern method of tech usage and selection is like allow your users to have that freedom and figure out how to put all of those tools they select under the same umbrella so you can get access to them, control them, move data around between them, and ultimately, you know, that adage that data is the currency of business, right? Like, how do you turn that currency into value? So
Tom, I think one of the things you're really hitting on that I actually put YouTube in the chat and hopefully making its way into the show notes as well for those that are listening. But Dave Copeland did a video on reimagining work, and he talks about this paradigm shift that has happened in the digital age. I mean, this is a 4 or 5 year old video, but that, you know, this mindset that everything, if you're a millennial, like Trent and myself, you know, everything is open except for those things that we choose to be closed. Whereas those that are in the older mindset, everything is closed except for the things that I choose to be open. Yeah. And I mean, Slack is a great example of that idea that, you know, once you're invited to a channel, you're invited to everything in that history, and you can kind of get everywhere that you get access to, except for the things you get shut out from. Versus emails more just, well, you're going to send it to who you send it to unless you decide that I'm going to send it to all, which is kind of a faux pas thing to do anyway, right? Yeah. And so it's like there's such a cultural change that needs to happen in order to, quote, you know, set your data free. that I think is where we're at, right? Because it's not a capability issue, as you continue to tell me, because I keep coming to Tom with all these hypotheticals. He's like, yeah, every time he's like, yeah, so of course we can do that. But that's not the problem. The problem is contracts. The problem is culture. The problem is, are we actually ready to do that change that this can enable?
Lends me to a little bit of a segue between both of those topics, as Jeff, I think, talks about shadow IT a lot of times. And we want our project teams to feel like a small business, so they're very autonomous. They can handle this stuff. But from a corporate standpoint, how do you, and maybe this probably is a little bit leaning, well, it's actually between the two of you, but at some point in time, you have to find standards so that you can report on that data, right? If you have all these disparate systems all over the place, and it probably starts a little bit with Nathan, because I know you've been working pretty hard with the concept of a CDX or a CDE, and you too, Tom, but that is the headache right now. Is it's not so much a technology problem, it's a definition and process problem.
Yeah, I mean, the only ones that have solved it are the single source. It's the Facebooks and the Epic systems and the whoever's, right? Like, name me a good example of like a truly distributed, successful, open eco. I mean, Android's getting close and I think that's kind of that whole analogy, right? Of like, how open or how closed are you going to be? But there's always going to be standards. It's just how kind of fragile and customizable, and like what is that right balance for this industry? Because we keep saying we're so unique, but we also keep saying we need standards. And like, Tom, I'm sure that's what you needed to hear, right?
Yeah, I like to talk about it. I mean, we have standards, right? Like, standards are out there. How well they're adopted, how well they get used, how well they get enforced. I mean, adoption and enforcement, that's where you get velocity. Like, at the end of it, like, so even if you're inside of a company and you're allowing some of that autonomy for your teams to be selective in how they ultimately operate, it doesn't sort of abdicate them from a responsibility to plan and design and collaborate on how they're going to use the tool that they prefer, because the way that you set that tool up might help bring it back towards that standard that you need, so that it can be integrated into a central reporting structure, or have data, make your selection criteria say, well, you can use any system you want as long as it meets these three criteria. And from a company perspective, these are the three criteria that really matter. There has to be some type of open access to data. If they don't get to the data, you can't use it, right? Or whatever, because like, you got to have access, number one. If you don't have access, you can't do anything with it, right? And so, those are I encourage people to kind of look at it more at a policy level. Like, the policies of old don't really apply in today's environment. So how do you think about setting those policies for your teams and giving them the basic criteria that they need to understand, so that you have a chance to kind of gain control of that distributed, decentralized environment? And so it's not necessarily a free-for-all, but you can establish control in a different way than maybe we have historically.
I think there's a lot of software that's actually acknowledging that. And I think there's some companies that are acknowledging that they're moving more towards being a platform, in terms of their mindset. We're a platform for the software that our users or our teams are going to be using throughout. And we're less of a dictation device where it's like, you are going to use A, B, C, and D. And I know integrated collaboration platform, I heard that as a term just recently from Revisto and some of the other ones. And I'm like, yeah, that's what we're looking for, is some platforms that have some really dynamic tools to pull into them that sort of, they do model after an ERP. But I think one of the bigger problems, and I'd like to hear what you guys' opinion on this is a lot of what I see is not a software problem. It's not a selection problem. It's really the fact that these businesses don't have processes in place to tell anybody what those rules are. Tom, to your point, what are the minimum requirements to meet our process? Because I think that's how I view it with the people I know. So have you guys started, especially at the CPC level, to really push certain processes and say, these are the processes that are gonna, I saw some awesome charts from you for a while there, Nathan, that were just like, I was all like, oh yes, this is a great process to match you with software. But could you expand on that just a little bit, how the process builds in to make you a better supplier platform for all these software pieces?
So ironically, part of the answer is trying to get away from dictating the process. So the whole thing that, I mean, Chris Langies and I have been talking about for 5+ years is this difference between performance standards and prescriptive standards, right? And that's really what you're saying, is that we need to get away from prescriptive ways of saying it has to be using this form in this system in my way, versus just, no, here's the data points that I need in this system. And if you've got X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and D different ways that you can get it there through APIs and other ways of submission, you're giving people sort of that choice. So to me, it's more about, like, that's where you get the creativity. That's where you get innovation, is by allowing the choice to change the process. But what you need is, you need the cogs, you need the gears, you need the little, Lego pieces that are standardized enough that you can build on top of them, but also flexible enough that gives you that creativity. And so I think that's where, and again, words that in terms that I've learned that Tom can probably expound upon a little bit better, of like a taxonomy data structure that is kind of like all the different data points, or in BIM, you talk about a model view definition. To me, that is a taxonomy. It's a column of data fields that, that we can point to, and you can point to those in a lot of different ways. You can point to it through IFCs and BCFs and PDFs and APIs and blockchain and whatever, but you need some sort of a backbone. So like that's step one. But then, how do you create all those different ways of plugging in and out of that? I think that's what CPC is trying to promote. That to me is what interoperability is to say yes and give people as many different possibilities that do meet a standard. But yes, it needs some backbone of whether it's these AGC XML or Building Smart or others. CSI is another great one, and all the work that Crosswalk's doing. A lot of standards that are out there, and a lot that we partner with that are creating the backbone. And we're just hoping to actually create as many different processes that can meet that same backbone, so that people can choose from, oh no, that's the one that meets best for me. And then it's easier for them, because then, they can just follow the instructions. But, I'd like there to be more than just one choice.
I don't know, Nathan, sorry to cut you off. I don't know if it's worth even mentioning something like the RFI report that you really spearheaded, but the CPC produced.
I think that's what Jonathan's mentioning, because he saw the blow up version of it in Dallas at the Dorkcast.
As long as
go ahead and talk about it, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's kind of the output, I think, that ultimately illustrates, the type of
one hypothetical example. Yeah. But we would hope that
we need to achieve, right? Because, you see it even, like, not to get too techie here, but you even see it in the realm of databases, right? So again, like back in the 90s and 2000s, it was all about relational static databases. Here are the data tables and columns, exactly the data that it needs to be. And you're seeing this huge shift towards schemaless databases. You can store whatever you want, wherever you want, however you want. And now it's sort of like how Gmail slightly shifted the email paradigm, where you don't have to worry about deleting and organizing folders. Like, you just archive it and you search and you find it, right? Like, you just get what you need when you need it, where you need it. And so you just kind of see the shift towards, in tech in general, towards less static, less rigid controls being put in place. And so, to Nathan's point, I think, as long as a company understands, here are the data, here's the aspects of data that I care about, and here's why I care about them, and here's where I need them. Those are better questions to answer than to say, you got to log in here and go to this form and do that, and otherwise, you can't work with me or whatever, right? And so I think that's the direction that we need to see people head. The RFI report that we did through the Electric Foundation, I think, is a great example for people to go out and digest, take a look at, and ultimately see how it might influence the way they think about that workflow within their own organization.
I've got an interesting question for both of you on this one too, because you're talking about two different groups. Tom, this is what your company does in a lot of that respect of actually bolting things together. And Nathan, the organization, does a lot of the mapping out and understanding and teaching on that side. And I had this interesting conversation a long time ago with a CIO who said, I want to stop talking about it and just do it. But I won't mention, but they're not around anymore. So why does just do it not work? Like, why is that not the route? Why do we need things like the CPC and then, groups like yours, Tom, doing this?
to involve the user, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, from my perspective, I'll say, like, I won't go too far down the path of like promoting Rivet, but I think one of the things that someone like us, in terms of the work that we do, is we focus on the experience as much as we focus on the data, right? And so just doing it implies like you're just going to wire these things up, and as if there's not users involved, as if it doesn't affect the work that they do every day, as if it doesn't impact people. And you got to understand that impact, understand their experience in working with an integrated environment, especially if that environment is decentralized or distributed. And ultimately, integration, can be thought of in many different ways, but at the end of the day, it's just automating workflow and helping improve collaboration, right? Does the team using this system get the data over to the team using that system with as little friction as possible? So you can kind of help people collaborate more effectively. You can do a lot of different things. I think there's a balance between talking about it and doing it. I think you have to take action eventually. But I do think that, to the point we made earlier, allow people to have some of that autonomy, allow people to take action, but also ask them to just pause for a second, collaborate with the people around them so that there can be a discussion, some planning, some organization in terms of how you go do what you're going to do, right? And so those are the things that we find important. The more we collaborate, the more open the process is. Just like the more open the system is, just like the more open access you have to the data, the better off you are in terms of hitting whatever outcome you see.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine, what the COO's response would be to hearing the CIO say that. And I think that's where, whether it's a VP of IT and VP of operations tech, or a CIO and COO, there always needs to be that sort of yin and yang between the leadership that empathizes with the needs of the workers that need to be, like, whatever they're doing to produce data is not their primary role, right? They're supposed to be doing something else, and the data should just come from it. And so there should be someone there really advocating for that. And then there should be someone else that's advocating for the centralized, what data we need to keep, what dashboards do the executives need, what does accounting need, those are two very opposite and very needed sides that need to balance. And if there's not a proper environment for them to sort of spar and find that appropriate middle point, you're not going to have standards on one side if you're too operations focused, or you're not going to be efficient if you're too IT focused. It has to be somewhere in the middle.
I think it brings up a really interesting point that I kept running into when I was CTO is, if you give me an open standard and said I could use any software I want to accomplish a task, I really don't care about what you tell me I want the task. Give me the aspirational goal, okay? You want to do this, I'll go find stuff to do that. The problem comes, and it's come for all of us as leaders of technology, is scaling that is very difficult, because the creative people who thrive in an environment that's very open is not the higher percentage of people in most industries, including our own. There is 50-50, or maybe even worse, of people that are going to thrive in an open environment. And the other people are going to want a systematic approach to doing production. And that's where I've run into the problem. That's what I'd like you guys to talk about maybe a little bit, as we were just talking about sort of all the openness. What about those people? And I have actual individuals that constantly come up to me and say, you're too all over the place. I want a systematic way to do this again and again so that I can scale it. Or else, guess what? Your job is to be the person that runs down all these loose pieces and puts them together. So how is that people part affected the way that you guys think about standards? And maybe more to the point, you, Tom, as you're working with companies and seeing both sides of the more innovative people wanting an open standard, and then having to scale that in the troubles that go along with scaling that I think we've talked about on this show a lot, where you end up a slave to what you've created.
Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, I think when you look at from the perspective of people, or companies implementing new technology, 9 times out of 10, any problems that go wrong really have nothing to do with the tech, right? And it has everything to do with the people involved in the project and or the acceptance of the people that are ultimately going to use the results. They weren't engaged. The organizational change impact wasn't managed, wasn't given enough weight in terms of how the project was approached. So I think you have to be cognizant of the fact that people are involved and people are generally speaking resistant to change, whether they should be or not. Over time, everyone is open to change. The question is, how long is the curve? And is that is that 1 day, 1 month, 1 year, or 10 years, right? And so I think that from a people perspective, I always like the concept of ask people to be in versus buy in. And so if you can invite people into the process early, if you're transparent and the what and the why, then you're allowing people to create a feedback loop, then ultimately people are going to be in with you on what you're trying to achieve and help you figure out how to get there versus the other way around where you basically say, all right, this is what we want to do, this is why we're doing it, and this is how we're going to do it. I need you to buy in on that, right? If you ask people to be in and help you figure out the how, you're going to be a lot better off. So easier said than done. But that is something that we try to bring into our approach. I'd say from a Rivet perspective, that's really where our partnerships thrive, is because we're working with software companies around construction tech to basically figure out that how do we help them integrate to these other systems that they want to integrate to. We understand why they want to do it. We understand what we're going to do. Now there's a lot of collaboration required for us to work with them very closely. But every time we do that, we invite customers, we invite construction companies in to help be in on that process to figure out, all right, well, this is what we think we're going to do. Now we need you to help us figure out how exactly that needs to come to life. Otherwise, we're going to miss the mark. And then we're going to roll this out and everyone's going to be like, yeah, that doesn't really do what I needed to do. So,
yeah, Tom's great at how, but if you don't have the why, you can't really solve anything, right? And really understanding the value proposition and thinking about it. I mean, if data is the new oil, or whatever your analogy is, it's thinking about the supply and demand of data, and what is the demand from executives for certain pieces of data, and how hard realistically is it to get that data? What's the investment going to have to be, and not just tech, but the resources and process change and whatever else to get there. And so, but if there's not that understanding of the demand first, and then a realistic look, a practical look at the supply second, and making sure you've got a right kind of that equilibrium there, that's almost like that's the litmus test before going into any interoperability initiative.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that a lot of people, my opinion, and some of this is just parsing semantics, right? But at the end of the day, everyone focuses on data when we should be focused on information. Like the information derived from data is driving the decisions that drive business. And so I think, Jonathan, you might have mentioned it, but at the based on the roles that people play, like their job isn't to collect data. Their job is to make decisions. Their job is to collaborate with people. Their job is to do those types of things. So what information do they need to do their job and be very efficient and very effective at that job? And whether it's at executive level or management level or individual contributor level, all of those levels, they require the right data, right information at the right time. And so beginning with the end in mind, working backwards, as Nathan alludes, like you got to figure out what are we trying to achieve and why are we trying to achieve it. And then you can easily kind of figure out how to put the foundation in place and build those building blocks towards that outcome. So.
Cool. I'll jump in too, because I think you guys hit on a couple of really, really good things, and we'll backtrack over kind of the past 15 minutes of conversation a little bit. But I think we're living in a world now where the technology has done a really good job at adapting, for it to accomplish tasks. And I think that there's people within our organizations that are doing a really good job at identifying what tasks need to be accomplished. And I think Travis would agree with me here, but the problem I see is we have solutions out there. Well, first we have problems, right? They're everywhere. There's a lot of solutions now, the problem that we have is people to drive those solutions and really make that stay within the company. Because I think it's easy to stay with that one-stop shop. I think, and that's why so many people did for so long. Because that's the easy answer. Shopping around for best of breed and trying to get all those different applications to speak to each other is hard. It's really, really hard, but you have to have that right individual to push that. So I just thought maybe we could, if you guys had any thoughts on that.
I mean, 100%. I mean, just looking at, Travis and having watched your path over the last few years and seeing where Brian was and really his obvious passion for technology, before you ever came on board, and kind of like without the combination of both the leadership and your support, you really need both. I think too often we see leadership go like, yeah, we need technology, and they hire someone like yourself, but then they just kind of like set you out to pasture. And like, it's like, well, hey, I can't just do this by myself. But oh, sorry, Jeff, was that too close to home?
Hey, I resemble that remark.
But I think that is a reality of leadership, that just, recognize it when it's there and avoid it like the plague, and find good leadership. And there's enough of it out there to go around. I guess is my best advice.
I really see what you said, Trent, is like tying in very closely with what, and I'm not promoting Rivet. I'm not trying to, but I am a little bit. What Rivet's trying to do in that there is an easy answer versus a best in breed. And I think, I hadn't thought about it that way. That was a perfect way to phrase that. Is the easy answer is we're going to buy an ERP and we're going to put on the ERP and we're going to have crappy everything, but across the board, we'll have all the answers. They'll just be crappy. Right. I'm going to really reveal my age. I actually used Lotus 1-2-3 and WordPerfect. And you know what they were? Better than Word and better than Excel when they first came out. And they were better, and it's really old, but they're better. And, but Excel and Word were free with the system. It's like, you guys remember Netscape? Again, really old.
I do. Well, I do actually.
Yeah. Netscape
was really good. And then it lost its business because Microsoft said, oh no, I'll put a crappy answer in with my stuff. And I think that's not to pick on ERPs. They do a great job. And there's a lot of companies that very much need them. I think they give easy answers. And I think that what you really need is you need to get together. You need to look at what are the standards. You need to look at what are the possibilities, because that's going to get you the best in breed. Yeah. And you absolutely need to hire a Trent and a Travis and a person that's going to spike that for your company, or you can have the easy answers, which will eventually catch up. But by the time they do, we're 2 miles, 3 miles down the road.
I think my point is that one's a better answer, right? But it's not like one's the wrong answer, because there are companies out there that don't take the stance that Helm, with Travis or North Mechanical with me, like they don't put somebody in that role to try and do that. So if you don't have somebody working on those processes and those standards, then the one-stop shop is probably the right answer for you. I don't know, Tom, would you agree? You'll probably find a way to disagree with me on that, but
no, so that's my big thing, right? Is to me, there's no right answer. Like, the right answer is what works for that company. There are companies that still, report time on paper. Is that how I'd run my company? No, but does that work for that company? Are they successful? Okay, great. Will they be able to become a $1 billion, $2 billion, $10 billion company doing that? I doubt it. So really, you put a ceiling on yourself, in my opinion, in terms of what type of support you get at the highest level of your organization to adopt and use technology. Like, it's basically an economic equation. Productivity per worker can only go so high when everything is a manual process. So the more manual processes you have, you cap yourself on growth and therefore efficiency, and therefore reach and scale. So from my perspective, there's no wrong answer. I just think that you'll see the construction industry at large, when you compare it to several other industries, is capped more than any other industry, right? Like, is there a construction company in the world that has 100,000 employees, 200,000? employees, 500,000
Even
employees.
Bechtel, I think, is maybe 20,000, 30,000.
Yeah, I'd be very shocked.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but when you look at other industries, there's lots of companies like that, right? And so you don't get the type of scale because there's a lack of efficiency. And it's not all software. Like, software isn't the only problem in terms of where efficiency needs to improve from a productivity per worker perspective for this industry, but it's certainly a big one. And I think you just look at the trends of the industry. Again, my background, I have a technology consulting company that operates across the Midwest. And so we work with a lot of industries. And construction is always the one that we struggle to get the same type of return on investment in with technology investments than we do with other industries, still to this day. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We just have to look at what other industries are doing successfully that are ahead of us and embrace the change faster, get more support from our leaders and our executives to demand a better, more improved, more efficient, more, higher growth opportunity. You'll see the big companies in this industry are investing in tech. I think I just saw Suffolk is doing an accelerator program, as an example, because they're not only investing in tech to operate their business, but they're investing in tech, right? And so when you start to see those big companies do those types of things, they're going to kind of force that innovation curve on the laggards of the industry. And so can you be a 10-man shop and not have to invest in tech? Of course. Can you be a 10,000 person shop and not invest in tech? Absolutely not, right? So wherever you are on that spectrum or that scale, if you want to grow, if you want, to expand your reach, you're going to have to leverage technology to do it. You're going to need that foundation to do it, or you just won't be able to hire enough people. You won't be able to be efficient enough. Your overhead will be too high. Margins won't be there. So it's more of an economic equation for me. There's not a right answer. Like, at the end of the day, if someone wants to be that big and cap themselves and they're good with that and they can run a great business, great. Use what works for you. What I think my passion lies is more so like, I'm geared towards growth. I'm geared towards helping people kind of improve, reach the potential that kind of sits inside them, right? Be the best version of yourself. Always kind of chase that better version of who you can be tomorrow. And so, we work best with people and companies that are interested in doing that. And, growth doesn't come without pain, whether it's in the gym or or in business. Like, there's always going to be a little bit of hurt in order to get the gain you're looking for, right? And so so to me, there's not a right answer. I think there's a lot of ERP solutions out there that really work well for some companies, and but they'll be in sort of the laggard category with respect to being able to truly scale and innovate and establish more reach with their business.
So there's definitely a better answer. I mean, you
Yeah,
could say that.
My answer is the better.
Agree with that.
Right. And I know Nathan loves buzzwords and buzz phrases, but I know one I heard a while was like, in construction, especially mechanical, electrical, where we make money off our labor. So what we do is we sell time, but you only have so much time you can sell. So how do you get more done in the time? Because you can only sell so much time. So
well, I want to throw a flag on all of you though, because I heard all of you say ERP and easy in the same sentence more than once. And as an IT guy who's done ERP,
this is Construction Dorks. We don't have to explain TLAs.
No, it's not a TLA. You said easy. That's just, that doesn't happen in IT. Like, no, ERP and easy.
It's perceived as easy. All right.
I would want to pivot off that thought, and it's a question I had, and it really applies to both of you, both from the CPC level, and Tom more from a execution level. But you alerted to earlier that more tech companies are starting to understand that they need to provide this openness and whatnot, and I think that was an early struggle for me coming out is. A lot of these technology partners are still trying to own the world. They want to be all and do all. And, we're an independent podcast. You guys have your own perspectives to represent. But as a construction dork, that is one of the things that's always frustrated me is I want to be able to use a Procore with a Viewpoint and an Autodesk. And they're all competitors. But I don't care. I want to get my job done. And are you starting to see that openness more and more from, is it only startup focused, or are you starting to see some of the big players buy into that as well?
I'd say the shift is moving slow, but the shift is moving in that direction. I think when Sage opened, took a stance to begin opening its ecosystem, that was a big move. I think that really is going to help support a lot of the other big players to follow suit. Autodesk with the Forge APIs and stuff, I think they're, acquisition of PlanGrid, et cetera, like we're seeing them really provide better access than maybe they have historically. So I think the shift is moving in that direction. I think that within the next decade, if you don't have an open ecosystem, you're going to struggle to compete. And so from my perspective, it's really, there's a couple of these big ecosystems out there. You mentioned them, right? Procore, Autodesk, Trimble, et cetera. So the question for me is really like, how does someone like a company like Helm, like how do you span those ecosystems well, and how do you kind of pick and choose what you want? And it's crossing the divide of those ecosystems, I think is a big struggle for the industry right now. That's a point of focus I think that we have, is to basically break down those barriers. I think, Nathan, you can probably speak to this better than me because this is sort of your daily focus.
Well, but you forgot the most important one, right? I mean, look at what Newform is doing with how many architects. I mean, they own the architecture engineering marketplaces, project management solutions, and so as a general contractor, like that's a huge. And so for them to invest and partner with Rivet and create those integrations with Procore and create those integrations with BIM 360, I mean, that's a huge step towards that direction. And I think that's that subtle difference, Travis, in like. If the ask is, hey, I'm using Viewpoint and I want to stay with Viewpoint, but my GC needs Procore, so I need to go to Procore, that's a different thing than, hey, I'm using Viewpoint as my ERP, but I also want to use Procore as my project management where they go, but we have a project management. It gets a little bit stickier there than the argument of that external integration of I'm going with someone else. So it's ironically starting with the external integration might actually be a better kind of like political route to go for some of these early integrations. And then we'll work our way, again, there's already point solution to obviously PM or point solution to ERP that are happening today. But eventually everybody's going to get there. I mean, I always bring up the same example that Google Docs and Microsoft Word. You can write a comment in one, save it, and move it to the other. And those are both proprietary file types, but yet all that metadata passes because they knew the customer needed that at some point. And so we will see that happen eventually, but only when enough people demand it. So right. The fact that everybody is talking about it is why we're at the tip of that hockey stick. Right, Jeff?
Yeah, and it took Microsoft's own phone not making it and them realizing, oh, well, if I want to be distributed, like Tom's point, then I'm going to have to open this thing up. I'm going to have to go to other platforms. And then I think it was Google, being the incumbent saying, it was Google being the new player, not the incumbent, saying, well, we've got this cool feature of all this markup and everybody can see what's going on. And Microsoft saying, well, people who want that are either going to leave or we've got to incorporate it. So, I mean, that's where I always go to. I love competition. I mean, I want all those things you mentioned, Tom, before with Trimble and Autodesk and Procore. And, that's why the show is not sponsored, because we want them to fight. I mean, I work for a software company too, and I want challengers. Why? Because challengers brings on better products for better use. And if you don't like it, you can move, and that's the beauty. And we're creating an ecosystem for that. But I'm kind of interested in, Travis and Trent, you kind of deal with this a little more than I do now where I sit. But how do you drive that hunger for better? Because it exists, but it's one of those things you have to ask for it. It's like, I can keep eating the same old peanut butter and jelly, and I can find out that there's some really cool new things out there for me to try.
And it takes Travis and I both to ask for it, not just one.
Right.
You have to have numbers. I mean,
for sure.
You have to make it a big enough issue to that provider to, if you're the only one talking about it, it's probably not going to make the forecast. So we do a lot of user groups, peer groups, all kinds of things where we get together. And
I actually feel bad for our software providers sometimes when we get into those. Because
Yeah.
it's just
I agree.
2-hour bitch fest and beating them up and but hopefully they're
And there's no separation between the things that they can control and the things they can't control. We just vent, right? And I'm always like, oh, hey, these are good things, but like, separate what they can help you with from what you need to figure out on your own.
Yeah, play a little triage, right? Like what's a big problem versus a little problem.
Well, and to your point, like and Tommy brought this up too, but like in a lot of areas, the technology is not the problem.
I agree.
I used to say that all the time, Travis. I don't fix software, I fix people.
Yeah.
It was always between the wing nut between the chair and the keyboard.
Yeah, if you want something that does X, I can find you 12 somethings that will do that X, but for 9 of those, you're gonna have to change the way you do it, and nobody wants to. Nobody wants to continue the conversation after that.
Right, because that's not easy.
Right.
We get back to the
easy.
Trust me, man. That's a struggle on my plate day in, day out. Is just getting people to realize that. Yeah, this is going to take a little effort. I mean, it's so.
You might have to change what you do each day, and that's tough.
The first job I had was for a surveying company. I was still in school, I think. I was working for a hospital surveying company, and they didn't have anything to do their accounting. And I was like, oh, crap, there's QuickBooks. This is like early, but she's like, well, we can't use that. And I said, well, I can't get my logo on that. And I was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I will buy you a stamp that has your logo and you can put your stamp on it after it comes out, but you're like wasting hours every day of your life because you were missing the logo. But that same thing amped up is I think, I know it's what I dealt with when I was a CTO, and I know I'm still dealing with it with clients where it's like, you realize how much time you're wasting because you want this one little widget. Right. How important that is, a $1,000 or $100,000 widget, man. Could you let it go?
Let's put a cost basis analysis together on that and let's figure out what.
Huge difference between a preference and a requirement.
Yes, exactly right. We have a preference problem here. That's not a requirement. That brings up something else though that I think I'd like to hear from maybe Nathan on is, one of the things with what you guys are proposing is that there's a certain level of discipline that needs to happen within the contractors. And I think more that I hear the more that I hear you talk more than anything else, Nathan, we're starting to round the corner where it stopped being a technology problem and even a process problem and is getting to the point where it's just a discipline problem. Mm-hmm. Where we're at the point where, like Jeff said, we're at just do it and the discipline's not really there to do that. Is there anything, and maybe Tom, you dealt with some people too, that you guys have done that you've seen that was like a really good discipline that helped with adoption of standards that are as complex, and not that they're like amazingly complex, but they're complex, that you're talking about with the CDX really?
I mean, because really what CDX is at the end of the day is it's a workflow documentation of how you're going to treat certain scenarios. And so I think that the whole paradox of the standards thing is that, from my opinion, you can figure out any which way you want to do it at the beginning of the project, but once you lock it in, you can't really change it. Like, especially in all this research I've been doing in blockchain is that, if you were to set up a project on blockchain, like that's the beauty is all this automated enforcement and all this, you can have all these great standards, but it means you can't change them once you set them up. And every time we decide, we do something and then we decide, that's not really how we want to do it. And we change it or we just don't adhere to it. And when you set up a machine that's like, sorry, like you told me this rule and I'm going to keep doing this rule, whether you like it or not, we may learn to hate it really quickly. So it's a little bit just taking our own medicine, I think, and recognizing that, yes, there's a lot of forethought that goes into this, that goes into automation and the efficiencies that technology and digital bring us. And we really have to think through it and play out those scenarios before we, press go.
Well, we're getting close to time. And so I know, Travis, you had a kind of a wrap-up question for us.
Yeah, and this is going to be kind of a challenge to both of you, and I don't know whoever wants to go first.
Oh man, I better pour some more then.
Right. Fill that cup.
That'll help.
Yourself a drink.
It always does. That's always a good
His answer just got more creative.
Right. I've mentioned a couple times on this podcast that our local community college works with local companies and local social and what's the word I'm looking for? Service providers through the county and the state and everything like that. And they put on a leadership development program. And this year I applied and was accepted into the development program. And it's kind of funny that the assignment given to me this week was to figure out some deficiencies I have in my own leadership and to and what activities I would do to bring that up and to get my vision initiated or installed. And one of the things that came out actually today, I was actually in the class today, so I missed all of the fun AU stuff, unfortunately, was to write a press release or an article or anything like that about 5 years in the future or however many years in the future. So because most of us are involved in sub trades or whatever else. So what I did was an article for the MCAA, and I would challenge you both to do something similar right now, is to write an article or riff an article right now that says, imagine your goal was achieved. What would you say? What would the people who you affected say? What kind of quotes would be in that article? What kind of details would be there? Because I think that back to the leadership class, like one of the things that I found is I don't share my vision well. I share the details, I share the tasks, I share the parts in the puzzle with the people that I think are affected there, but I don't share the overall vision. And sometimes what happens is one puzzle piece will fail and, well, we're explicit, then I'm fucked, right? Because the rest of the puzzle doesn't work. So that's one of the things I'm learning right now is kind of back to Nathan's. I used WIFM probably 6 times today in the class. Is explain the WIFM, and if you were to explain the WIFM in the manner of a press release or some sort of article that you wrote for the MCA or AGC or anything like that, what is the WIFM of what your vision is?
Ooh. Is that a question I'm supposed to answer now, or I just have to write that challenge?
No.
Challenge accepted, first and foremost.
Verbal diarrhea right now.
Tom, you get to go first.
I'll go first. So if I imagine the future, I think that there are no longer questions about if or how we should be exchanging data between trade focuses or roles on the project. There will no longer be questions about, I use Procore and you don't. You use eSub. How do we connect? There will no longer be questions about. I think the TLA for ERP will become less because the concept of an ERP will have shifted in people's minds to what a modern day ERP could look like in terms of having a platform approach to run your company. So think of a company basically saying, I don't know how we ever operated before we had this platform that we could configure and reconfigure and retool year in and year out to execute our plan. I think that the way the opportunity available to construction companies is massive with respect to what they do to impact the world around us. Every one of us listening to this, every one of us on this call, every person, every sort of person in humanity is impacted by construction and always has been. It's arguably the oldest industry. So I think that you can imagine a world in which, you know, like the conversations today are all about, you know, who's responsible, which system do I log into? Well, how come, you know, they don't have an API and they do? Like, all of that goes away, right? The conversation shifts. There's still a conversation. There's still challenges. There's still things that we'll be pushing for and pushing on. But the conversation shifts away from, you know, how do I operate a distributed environment? How do I kind of select best of breed? Is it best of breed or is it not? That conversation will go away, right? If we accomplish everything we set out to accomplish in 5 years. Will it take longer? It might, right? But that day will come where every company kind of thinks of the way that they operate as their own platform for independence of an ERP they sign up for, independence of an ecosystem that they exist in today, or independence of the role they perform on that project, because, you know, their ability to collaborate internally and externally, their ability to get information into the hands of the people that need it will be far more available to them in a way than it ever has been, and probably in a way that they can't even imagine today, right? So without having had time to think through that before I word vomited, that's the best I can do for now. So,
It's an
And
awesome
full
word
For giving me
vomit.
time to have
It's
a really good
word
thought
vomit.
full
Yeah, I was
disclosure for
gonna
my
say, now I
exercising
bought Nathan
class today,
time, really,
I had
so-
10
Nathan's like,
minutes and 15
Thank
minutes.
you,
totally
Tom.
Your turn.
Well, I mean, along those lines, so I'm going to slightly disagree. I think, because I'm going to say some things that'll contradict, but I think we're saying the same thing, because we're already seeing some of the larger general contractors and trade contractors go towards this idea of an internally driven database with an internal app store that basically says you've got your choice of choose whatever you want to use on this given project, or whatever your personal preference is for these certain things. So if you're a Expensify versus a QuickBooks versus whatever your app choice is, it's always going to the same central data source. So it doesn't become a question and issue. It just becomes a choice. So there's that sets your kind of internal company technology stack. But then this still leaves this challenge of every project is different. Just like Hollywood. I mean, the Hollywood example is a great way to think about how construction projects come together. Like, you have directors, you have producers, you have actors, you have stagehands, you have, backhands and forehands, all that have to come together to make this beautiful project. And everybody has their own representative. There's a reason you have agents and you have all this bartering, because it's this balance of creative and business. And so that's absolutely what construction, especially if you're doing anything that involves architecture, is all about, is that creative process. So you need to set up at the beginning of that project, that conversation, that kickoff, that CDX conversation, the execution charter, identify all your BIM deliverables and all that sort of jazz. That still needs to happen, but it's going to be such a more it's just what you do. Like, that's part of the process of how you deliver projects. And it's just a thing that we actually spend more time on, and actually kind of enjoy going through that creative process of trying to see if we can make this project just a little bit more efficient than last project, based on how we did last project, and really invest in that time, that creative time. Because again, the way I look at like Agile and kind of that whole process of the Scrum initiations and then the sprint deliverables, if we're not doing both, we need to do both the Scrum ideation so that we can produce much better project deliverables. So I think it's both. That's another word vomit for you.
Well, that was awesome. And with that, we are going to call it. However, I'm going to trump all of you, because my release is going to be 5 years from now. Spotify acquires the Construction Dorks for $100 million a year, after 5 years successfully representing Flavia.
It's important to have goals.
Podcast. It's important to have goals. It's our show. That's what we want. That's what I want to see in 5 years. I want to thank both of you, Tom and Nathan, for all the work that you do in this industry, all the thought leadership that you've brought, the friendship that I've been able to have with both of you, and work with your organizations. This has been awesome that you joined us today. So thanks for coming.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Hey, thank you guys for supporting CPC. It's been a fun ride.
Yeah, and more to come. And if you're listening in, check out the constructionprogress.org. Tom, where can they go find Rivet?
Just head on over to the site, rivet.com.
ryvit.com. If you're not looking in and seeing it on his
Rivet,
shirt.
not Revit.
Yeah, not
Rivet, not
what
Revit.
the old
good
CAD
Revit.
guy calls Revit, right?
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us. I think I want to rename this episode on behalf of Vanilla Ice, because if you guys didn't realize, you said it more than once. Stop, collaborate, and listen. So
I like it.
I like it a lot.
Thanks for
like
tuning
it.
in today.
It's awesome.
With that bad pun, it's not even a Tuesday. I'm out. The Construction Dorks are out. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
There he is.
There you are.
I haven't heard from Tom yet. I sent him
That
a
was
text.
weird. That was
Did you have to reinstall the Zoom?
yeah.
They did an update this week, and it
Those bastards.
it prompted you.
I hate people that update their software.
Yeah, it's just terrible. Like
Windows 3.1. That's where I'm running right now.
Yeah.
I'm going back to Vista. ME.
Two sides.
That
to
lasted
every
all of
coin,
3
Trent.
weeks.
Two sides to every coin. Hey, we can get it. Oh my gosh, Jonathan, that boxing game. Holy crap.
Dude, how are you feeling?
I am so sore. It's insane.
Dude, I love it. It's
Sample,
Did you-
yeah, well, Sam was on the phone. He needs to download that shit.
Oh yeah, dude. And I got my kids doing it. Did you do it with the class of other people?
No, I was just fighting against, like, I did like the easy one, and then I did the real life person. I was like, holy crap, like I won, but it went.
Oh,
all
no,
down.
dude,
I was exhausted.
There's another one called Fitness RX, which is shadow boxing against like these balls that are throwing at you. And you're in with 10, 15 other people, and it becomes competitive. I'm not a competitive person. I'm an anti-competitive person even.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there like, no way you're beating me. I don't even care. I could start bleeding right now, and I'd just be going because I'm number 2, and that's not happening.
Yeah.
We get a weekly call from the principal to tell us the updates. And the last call, he was like, listen, guys, you have to stop partying. I'm running out of bus drivers. I'm running out of teachers. And there's only so many of those people, or else your kids are going to stay home with you. And,
Right.
and he was like, he had sounded really good the first part of the year. Now he's just started. He sounds like he probably knocks back a couple before he makes the call, you know?
Can you blame him though?
The only way to really do it.
It's becoming a hell of a year.
Yeah.
It became a hell of a year a long time ago.
I don't know. I'll have to find this song again.
Don't stop partying.
I
Oh,
don't know if
shit.
you guys are fans of a band called Flogging Molly.
I like
They're,
Flogging Molly. They were cool.
Yeah.
It's a cool name.
They're really long. That's like late 90s,
Yeah.
95 and such.
They came up on my Pandora the other day, and they have a song called "The Worst Day Since Yesterday," and I kind of figured it was a 2020 theme song.
There's a flavor of the 90s in 2020 for whatever reason. Just like it's like, ah, fuck, everything's going bad.
Right.
I'm gonna go join a rock band when this is all over and just leave this to you guys. And be good. Gosh, you know what? He just realized he could have a drink. He just realized he could have a drink, and he's running to the. like,
Drop the mic.
Rock band reminded me.
I was looking at my liquor cabinet the other day, and I'm like, I only had 3 drinks. And then you look at your bottle, it's like, but this much is gone. Am I mixing them too strong, or what's going on here?
Oh yeah. I think I have the biggest 2 fingers. If you're like 2 fingers, it's like meh, maybe 4. Yeah, let's throw a thumb in there.
That's the beauty of liquor. It's scalable. I mean, it's like depending on the day you had. I mean, beer is you got what you got. If you had a bad day, you can scale liquor. It's like,